Hi guys, this is Erica from Gokce Capital. Now before I begin, be sure to click subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Katrina's niece squatted on the floor amidst the apples. She tugged at Katrina's arm and put a hand on her cheeks. "Aunt Katrina," she said, "why do you live in a shed?" So what was the answer? We'll find out at the end of this video. But first, for those of you interested in tiny homes or homesteading, you may have run across an article or two on how to turn a shed into a home. However, before you jump on this affordable living arrangement, there are a few things you should know first. Number 1, why would anyone want to live in a shed? First of all, it's cheap. Living in a shed is far less expensive than paying rent in a major city or buying a home. Sheds aren't difficult to move. You can simply load a shed onto the back of a trailer and haul it to your location of choice. And most pre-made sheds are pretty basic, which makes it easy to customize them to your needs and desires. A shed may benefit a homeowner because it allows you to quickly and cheaply add a second unit to house visitors or friends or family who have hit a rough patch. Finally, property owners may want to use a shed to build a quick cabin that can serve as a weekend getaway on a vacation property. Number 2, what are the disadvantages of living in a shed? Although sheds are seen as an affordable housing option, there are some real drawbacks to them. Pre-manufactured sheds are not going to come with plumbing. Sheds are not generally built to be lived in, and so they lack insulation. An additional obstacle is how difficult it may be to find an area where you are legally allowed to live in a shed. Sheds also tend to have poor indoor air quality and may be built from materials that are likely to off-gas toxic chemicals. And finally, sheds are not built to be watertight, and you will likely find that a pre-built shed has moisture infiltration. Number 3, can you legally live in a shed? As we mentioned, the legality of living in a shed is one of the biggest hurdles you'll face. In many jurisdictions, zoning prohibits living in a shed or other kind of tiny home. Number 4, assuming that you are legally able to live in a shed, how do you connect power? First, depending on the jurisdiction, you may need to have water installed. This could either be from a water main or via a well. You will then grade the land where you're going to place your shed and build out your shed pad. Assuming you are buying a prefabricated shed from a place like Lowe's, you will purchase the shed and have it dropped off at the land. You will then need to have the shed installed on the shed pad. Once the shed is in place, you can put in an application with the local power company. Just note that you are likely to get approved for only a 50 to 100 amp service. Number 5, how do you connect your shed to sewer? Many jurisdictions will not allow you to install a flush toilet or septic system unless your shed is first designated as a legal dwelling. And as we mentioned earlier, many areas will not permit that a shed be used as a full-time residence. However, assuming that you are able to get your shed permitted, you will then reach out to the local water and sewer department to figure out how to connect it to the public sewer system. If there is no public sewer, you will need to install a septic system. Septic permits are administered by the county or city public health department, and as with connecting to public sewer, you will first need to ensure that the shed can be classified as a legal dwelling. If so, you will then need to provide the county public health department with a passing percolation test. Now, it's worth noting that some people who are living in a shed install a composting toilet or a porta potty service as an alternative to a septic system. However, keep in mind that not every county will allow such alternative waste systems. And finally, number 6. If you do decide to move forward with living in a shed, how do you make it comfortable? As we mentioned before, most prefabricated sheds are very basic, and you will need to do some improvements to ensure that the shed is livable. Seal up any cracks to ensure moisture doesn't infiltrate. You'll also want to add insulation so that the shed does not become too cold or too hot. Install a small AC and space heater or wood-burning stove. You may want to upgrade the floor to give it a nice look, and of course install lighting, unless you want to read by candlelight at night. But now that we've covered the basics of shed life, let's return to Katrina. It was autumn, and the apple tree in Katrina's garden had dropped its harvest. The floor of Katrina's shed was covered in apples, the size and shape of wild-grown fruit, which is to say, ugly enough to be laughed out of supermarkets. Katrina's niece picked her way through the apples as Katrina wrapped them in newspaper and came to squat on the floor beside her. "Aunt Katrina," she said, "why do you live in a shed?" At age 31, Katrina found herself ill with stress, trying to pay her £400 rent in Bristol, England, on her piecemeal income from writing and teaching cello. She wanted freedom, the freedom to work and work hard on things that matter. And in a peak of nostalgia, she went on Google Earth and searched for the Cornish Peninsula where she grew up. Looking at her childhood home, she remembered the dilapidated shed, which her dad had used as his architect's office before he went bankrupt. Katrina envisioned herself waking up in the shed, going outside, and listening to the birds. So she decided to move into the 100-square-foot wood structure. Katrina writes with eloquence of her shed in her memoir, Homesick, but she does not over-romanticize her experience. The idea of freedom, from work, from rent, from the need to accommodate ourselves to others' demands, has a strong pull. Yet freedom, at least as we imagine it, comes with its costs. Yes, Katrina pays no rent. She can spend her days writing and surfing, gardening and making music. But for a long time she had no electricity, no toilet, no heating, and no shower. Her kitchen is a small tray set beside an outside hose, and she must wash slugs from her dishes before eating. And in her writing, you can sense the ambivalence that Katrina feels toward her home. She loves the sea and her garden, but she is angry at the economic realities that have kept her out of the housing market. Still, how did she respond on that autumn day when her niece took her face between her hands and asked why she lives in a shed? "Honey," Katrina said, "someone has to." But what do you think? Do you have any stories about living in a shed? Let us know in the comments. Did you like this video? You're going to love our Gokce Land Due Diligence program. We'll make you a land due diligence expert in just 7 days. Check it out at gokcecapital.com/glad. And while you're at our website, don't forget to explore our $1 down listings at gokcecapital.com/listings. Finally, don't hesitate to reach out. You can email, call, or text, and we will respond as soon as possible. So thank you for listening, and more to come.